The Kansas City Chiefs are facing some possible changes, things we haven't seen in quite a while. While all the attention is on the playoffs, a few key people, including one of the greatest coaches in history and Brett Veach's trusted assistant, might be on the move soon. I've got a lot to cover, from Travis Kelce's response to claims about being scared of the Bengals to the Titans getting taken down by the Vikings, and more. But first, let's look at the playoff picture. In the AFC West, three teams are heading to the playoffs. The Broncos are off to Buffalo to face the Bills, and the Chargers will play the Texans in Houston. Meanwhile, the Raiders are once again in search of a new head coach. That's right, Antonio Pierce was fired after his first full season as head coach. He had been with the team for about a season and a half, starting as interim head coach in 2023. During that time, his record was 9 wins and 17 losses, with a rough 4-13 record this year. But honestly, he didn't get much help. The team entered the season with Gardner Minshew as their quarterback, and they expected Pierce to somehow make it work. As a Chiefs fan, though, I don't mind the chaos in Vegas. Mark Davis and the Raiders might have just wanted a coach with more experience. While the Chiefs, Broncos, and Chargers focus on their playoff runs, the Raiders are scrambling for their 7th head coach since 2012, or 8th if you count the interim after John Gruden was fired. Moving on to Travis Kelce, he responded to the rumor that the Chiefs purposely lost their game against the Broncos to keep the Bengals out of the playoffs. But before I dive into what he said, it's worth mentioning that Kelce recently won the Walter Payton Man of the Year Charity Challenge. That means his foundation will receive a $35,000 donation, which is a big win for a guy who does so much good in the Kansas City community. Kelce shared his gratitude with his fans in a video and emphasized that now it's time to focus on the playoffs. Now, as for the rumors, Kelce wasn't having any of it. There was some wild talk from certain people claiming that the Chiefs lost to the Broncos on purpose to stop the Bengals from making the playoffs. Kelce set the record straight, saying that even if the Bengals had lost to the Steelers earlier in the day and were out of the playoff picture, the Chiefs would have still rested their starters. In fact, they would have sent out their second and third string players. The focus for the Chiefs has been on staying healthy and getting ready for the playoffs, especially with the top seed already secured, regardless of the outcome of their final game. Travis Kelce made it clear he wasn't having any of the nonsense surrounding the idea that the Chiefs purposely lost to the Broncos. On his podcast, Kelce was fired up, using some strong language to say he's not afraid of anyone in the playoffs. He's ready to take on any team, one by one, like in Mortal Kombat. He doesn't care if the Chiefs end up playing the lowest seed. He wants the best teams. Kelce loves the competition and especially enjoys playing against the best. And since the Bengals were playing well towards the end of the season, it would have been exciting to face them. But as he pointed out, no one intentionally lost that game against the Broncos. They were just outplayed. He also added that nobody wanted to lose that final game of the season, and the obvious truth was that the Chiefs were handed a tough defeat. The team had clearly gone with a more basic game plan, playing mostly backups. It wasn't a game anyone expected them to win. In fact, one of the defenders who played that day was linebacker Blake Lynch, who had only joined the practice squad just 6 days before the game. The Chiefs needed extra help at linebacker because of some injuries and wanted to give their starters a rest. Despite coming in with limited preparation, Lynch did a solid job, earning the highest defensive grade from PFF. However, the Chiefs decided to part ways with him, ending his practice squad contract after a week, and brought back wide receiver Montrell Washington. Washington, who's familiar with the Chiefs' system, can also serve as a reliable punt or kick returner if needed. Speaking of returners, there's the situation with Nico Rio. He's on the 53-man roster, but with Mecole Hardman's 21-day window to return now open, there's a decision to be made. Will the Chiefs bring Hardman back and keep Nico Rio, or will they waive Rio and try to bring him back onto the practice squad? Personally, I think Rio has shown more aggression as a returner than Hardman, but if the Chiefs go with Hardman instead of keeping both players, it'll be an interesting move to watch. It seems like the decision to keep Mecole Hardman could be because the coaches believe he can contribute more to the offense when needed. We all know about Hardman's speed and his role in gadget plays like jet sweeps, which can be effective even if he doesn't get a lot of offensive snaps. Whether or not he stays on the roster remains to be seen, but it's clear the coaching staff has some tough decisions ahead, especially when it comes to some possible underrated losses. With changes on the horizon, the team's future direction is still in the air. But before we dive into those changes, let's shift focus to the playoffs. Now that the regular season is over, it's time to gear up for some exciting playoff football. While we don't know exactly who the Chiefs will face yet, We do know one thing for sure: they'll have home field advantage throughout the playoffs. That's a huge boost as they look to make another deep playoff run. Now let's talk more about the trades the Chiefs made with the Titans. Looking back, those deals are starting to look even better for Kansas City. For example, the Chiefs traded L'Jarius Sneed to the Titans for a 2025 third-round pick. At the time, no one realized that pick would end up being one of the top picks in the third round. The Titans finished the season with the worst record in the NFL, tied with the Giants and Browns at 3-14. That means the Chiefs now have the second pick in the third round, which is a nice boost for their draft plans. The way the draft works when teams have the same record is a bit complicated, but long story short, the Chiefs got a very early third-round pick for Sneed, which is great value. The trades don't stop there, though. When the Chiefs brought in DeAndre Hopkins at the trade deadline, they gave up a 2025 fifth-round pick. That pick could have turned into a fourth-rounder if Hopkins played 60% of the offensive snaps in the regular season and the Super Bowl. However, Hopkins only played 49% of the snaps during the regular season, so the trade will remain a fifth-round pick. Brett Veach really deserves credit for these moves. While Sneed was a valuable player for the Chiefs last year, he spent much of the season injured and only played 5 games. Switching gears to some player recognition, Trent McDuffie is a player I believe got snubbed from the NFLPA's third annual Players All-Pro list. While I can't be too upset about it, after all, the list was voted on by players across the league, it's tough to see McDuffie left off. Both Patrick Surtain II and Derek Stingley Jr. are outstanding cornerbacks, but McDuffie had an exceptional season and deserves more recognition. The Chiefs had some well-deserved recognition in the NFLPA's version of the All-Pro list, which was voted on by players across the league. Defensive tackle Chris Jones made the list, and rightly so, as he's considered one of the best in the game. Along with him, 2 standout players from the offense, center Creed Humphrey and left guard Joe Thuney, were also selected. Congratulations to all of them. While this isn't the official All-Pro list, it's still a significant honor to be recognized by your peers. Now, moving on to Trent McDuffie. Even though I believe he got snubbed from the NFLPA's All-Pro list, McDuffie is eligible for a contract extension, as the entire 2022 draft class can now negotiate extensions. The Chiefs will likely wait until after their playoff run to handle these matters, but McDuffie could become the first defensive back the team has signed to an extension since Eric Berry. McDuffie has proven himself as one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL, and there's plenty of data to support that. I talked more about his impressive performance in a previous video, but the point is that the Chiefs would be wise to lock him down long-term. Of course, it won't be cheap. Patrick Surtain II, one of the league's top corners, recently signed a 4-year, $96 million deal with the Denver Broncos, and McDuffie's price tag will likely be in the same ballpark. It might not be quite as much, but it's going to be a hefty investment. The Chiefs will have a lot of decisions to make, not just with McDuffie, but also with other key players from the 2022 draft class. George Karlaftis, Brian Cook, Leo Chenal, Joshua Williams, Jalen Watson, and Isaiah Pacheco have all contributed significantly over the years, and the team will need to consider their future with the franchise. On top of that, key players like Nick Bolton and Trey Smith are set to hit free agency soon, among others. There's plenty of time to dive deeper into those decisions, but it's clear the Chiefs have a lot of important choices ahead, and change could be on the horizon. Speaking of change, the Chiefs may also lose one of their key decision-makers this offseason. Offensive coordinator Matt Nagy recently had a virtual interview with the New York Jets for their head coach position, and Chiefs assistant GM Mike Borgonzi interviewed for the Jets GM opening as well. Borgonzi has been with the Chiefs for 16 years, climbing through the ranks and currently overseeing their college and professional scouting operations. He plays a major role in the draft and helps manage the team's roster through free agency, waivers, and trades. Losing him would be a significant blow to Kansas City, but the Jets would likely benefit greatly from bringing him on. Borgonzi has been part of one of the most well-run organizations in the NFL, and his expertise would be a valuable asset for any team. Over the past decade, the Chiefs have consistently been one of the NFL's best-run organizations, year in and year out. Meanwhile, the New York Jets have been the polar opposite, enduring the longest playoff drought in the league. This stark contrast is no surprise, given the Jets' struggles over the years. But now, there are signs that some key figures from the Chiefs might be looking to move on. Diana Russelli of The Athletic reported that the Titans have requested an interview with Mike Borgonzi, the Chiefs' assistant GM. This development makes it seem increasingly likely that Borgonzi could leave Kansas City this offseason for one of these other teams. If Borgonzi does leave, it will be a significant but somewhat underrated loss for the Chiefs. He's not a name that grabs headlines, but he's Brett Veach's right-hand man and plays a crucial role in how the Chiefs build their roster. His departure would leave a big gap, and whoever steps into his shoes will have some massive responsibilities to fill. It would be bittersweet to see him go, but given his impressive career, I would be happy for him if he gets an opportunity elsewhere. As for Matt Nagy, it's hard to say if he'll land the head coach job with the Jets, given how many candidates they're interviewing. While Nagy's time with the Bears had its ups and downs, it's worth noting that he helped bring them back to the playoffs for the first time in 8 years and then did it again 2 years later with Mitch Trubisky at quarterback. His tenure in Chicago ended poorly, but Nagy returned to Kansas City to rebuild his coaching reputation. While he's not the most beloved figure in KC, I wouldn't be surprised if another team, possibly the Jets or someone else, gave him another chance as a head coach sooner rather than later. Personally, I'm not too concerned about the offensive coordinator role in Kansas City as long as Andy Reid is at the helm. Reid runs the offense, and there's no debate about that. If Nagy does leave, however, it raises the question of who will step in as the next defensive coordinator. It would be exciting to see a fresh face with new ideas brought in, but that's often easier said than done. Andy Reid typically prefers to promote from within. One potential candidate could be Joe Blameyer, the Chiefs' pass game coordinator. He has a solid background, having previously been the team's wide receivers coach and pass game analyst. Given Reid's tendency to trust familiar faces, it wouldn't be surprising if Blameyer gets a shot. Another possibility is Doug Peterson, who was previously the Chiefs' offensive coordinator from 2013 to 2015. Peterson has a strong connection with Reid, and although he was recently let go as the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars after a tough season, he would bring a wealth of experience to the role. Peterson is known for his leadership and innovative approach, having led the Philadelphia Eagles to a Super Bowl victory in 2018. If Nagy moves on, Peterson could very well find his way back to Kansas City, potentially bringing a new level of excitement to the offense. Doug Peterson's return to Kansas City as an offensive coordinator would bring a lot of experience to the table. After his time as the Chiefs' OC, he went on to become the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, where he led them to a Super Bowl victory. Following that, he spent time as the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. While he didn't have the most successful final season with the Jags, his experience and winning pedigree make him an intriguing possibility to fill the role should the Chiefs need to find a new offensive coordinator. Peterson has built a strong coaching resume and has a solid relationship with Andy Reid, which could make him a valuable addition to the staff once again. Another name that fans have been eagerly asking about is Eric Bieniemy. After serving as the Chiefs' offensive coordinator, Bieniemy moved to the Washington Commanders, where he was tasked with leading their offense. Unfortunately, his tenure didn't yield impressive results, as the team finished the season with a 25th-ranked scoring offense. From there, Bieniemy went to UCLA, but his time there was short-lived as well, with the team averaging just 18.4 points per game. Despite these setbacks, Bieniemy's agent insists that the departures were mutual, and that Bieniemy's goal is to return to coaching in the NFL. His time in Kansas City, however, remains marked by a more efficient offense, and his future remains uncertain. As the Chiefs head into the playoffs, the focus remains on the team's postseason run, but there are plenty of questions lingering about the future of the coaching staff. Matt Nagy, for instance, could find himself coaching elsewhere next season, but that remains to be seen. The Chiefs are aiming for another successful postseason, with many eyes on Wildcard Weekend to see who they'll face in the divisional round. Adding to the list of potential changes, there's also talk of the New York Jets requesting an interview with Chiefs defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo for their head coaching vacancy. Spags has been a cornerstone of the Chiefs' defense, and his success over the years makes him one of the top defensive minds in the NFL. The possibility of him leaving would be a blow to Kansas City, especially since he has been a big part of the Chiefs' success. When asked about returning to a head coaching role, Spags mentioned that while he does have aspirations to become a head coach again, he's focused on the current task at hand, helping the Chiefs win. While his focus remains on the season ahead, it's clear that Spagnuolo's future with the Chiefs is something to keep an eye on. The continuity in coaching, with Andy Reid on the offensive side and Spags on the defensive side, has been a major factor in the Chiefs' sustained success. If either of these key coaches were to leave, it would shake up the team's dynamic significantly, especially heading into the playoffs. Fans are hoping for more consistency as the Chiefs push for a possible three-peat in the postseason. But as with any championship caliber team, change is always on the horizon. The success of the Kansas City Chiefs has been largely attributed to the consistency and quality of their coaching staff. Many teams that make deep playoff runs and even reach the Super Bowl often see their assistant coaches get poached by other teams, and the Chiefs are no exception. This is what could make the upcoming offseason particularly interesting, as there are several coaching changes and potential departures that could shake things up. One of the key figures who could be heading elsewhere is defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo. There have been reports that both the New York Jets and the Las Vegas Raiders have shown interest in interviewing him for their respective head coach openings. While Spagnuolo has stated that he remains focused on the task at hand with the Chiefs, his tenure with the team has undoubtedly helped establish one of the league's top defenses, and it would be a huge loss if he were to leave. His assistant, defensive backs coach Dave Merritt, who has been with Spags for over a decade, spoke highly of him, stating that he would create a winning culture if hired as a head coach. While the thought of Spagnuolo coaching against the Chiefs, particularly within the AFC West, is a daunting one, the possibility of his departure cannot be ignored. In addition to Spagnuolo, offensive coordinator Matt Nagy and assistant GM Mike Borgonzi could also be on their way out. Nagy, despite a less than stellar time as the head coach of the Chicago Bears, has done a solid job as OC for the Chiefs, and there's a chance he could get another head coaching opportunity elsewhere. Borgonzi, on the other hand, has been an integral part of the Chiefs' success for years, helping manage their roster and the draft process. His potential departure to another team would be a big loss for the Chiefs, as his experience and role as Brett Veach's right-hand man have been crucial to the team's success in building a championship-caliber roster. With the playoffs fast approaching, there's a strong focus on the present, but these potential changes in the coaching staff could have a lasting impact on the team. The Chiefs have managed to keep their coaching core intact for a number of years, which has helped them remain competitive and successful. However, as with any championship team, the offseason will likely bring some changes, and the Chiefs will need to prepare for life without some key figures, if they do indeed leave. The Chiefs' future may be uncertain in terms of coaching staff, but for now, the focus is on the playoffs. It's a balancing act of looking toward potential changes in the offseason while remaining focused on winning another Super Bowl. The next few weeks will be crucial as the Chiefs look to make another deep run in the postseason. Fans will be keeping a close eye on how things unfold, with the possibility of both major coaching departures and continued success in the playoffs looming large.